Welcome everyone to the Brain to Books Cyber Convention first panel discussion. This is the romance panel discussion. We have quite a crowd here today. I'm very excited. So let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Aurelia. I write everything, which is why I organized all the panel discussions. And so I'm excited to be here and to be fielding questions to everyone else. So, BK, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm BK Rivers, and I'm fairly new to authoring. I just published my first book in February. It's called Raining Down Rules. It's a new adult contemporary romance. It has rock stars and firemen and girls, of course. Then my second book, Raining Down Redemption, will be coming out August 2nd. And I'm here just to talk to you all and have a good time.
Awesome. All right, Erin, you're up next.
Hi everybody, I'm Erin Crewy. I'm the author of the Ripple Affair series. There's currently 3 books out with that right now. First one is obviously The Ripple Affair. Second one is Reign of Change, and the third one is When Dreams Break. It's a romance fantasy series. I also have a pirate series that's a little bit adventure, a little bit comedy out as well. So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm sorry my voice is a little rocky because I just got over the flu like yesterday and I still have the icky cough and stuff, so I'll try not to get my germs everywhere. But thanks for having me, and I can't wait to hear you guys' questions.
All right. So, Heidi, you're up.
Hello everyone, my name is Heidi Angel, and I am the author of the Claire Angel Chronicles, which I thought was a psychic detective series, but I have also been informed it's a paranormal romance. And I have 2 books out in that series. The first is Elements of a Broken Mind, and the second is Angel's Dance. The third one will be released early next year.
All right. Jean.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh,
You're a representative male right now. You should feel special.
let's see. Sorry, it's about 2:05 in the morning in Japan, so
Thank you for joining us at that very early hour.
please don't mind my sluggish thing. Let's see, where should I start? I'll start very simply. My original name is called Omar, but I just became a Japanese citizen last year, had my name changed to Japanese. It was not required. I chose to change it because my original name is just so fucking long. Let's see. Originally, I published a series called Amber Light series, which I just got back the rights this year, so I'll be republishing that one under my own name. That one is a fantasy romance, mostly dark fantasy though. The one that I came up with now is actually Love, and the one that just released 2 weeks ago is Kaoru in Love's Shadow. They're both romance books. They're based more on the relationship side of romance rather than any of the physical.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking more at how they interact with each other rather than just the love stuff. And it's more true to life kind of thing. That's me.
Cool. All right, Shirley.
Hi, I'm Shirley Hailstock. This is the first cyber conference I've ever been to, so I don't quite know how it works. I've written 35 books. I have a series called Capital Chronicles. The first book in the series is Under the Sheets, and it's free in all the retailers in case you want to go get it. I write both traditional and self-published books, and they're contemporary romances and romantic suspense.
Awesome. And Skylar?
Hi, I'm Skylar Nightingale, and I write romance, new adult romance, but I think I'm going to be branching out into fantasy. I'm thinking about doing some fantasy and maybe some other genres as I continue to progress.
Awesome. So, my first question is, what drew you to romance as a genre? And we'll go through in the same order, so you can just start. BK.
I read a lot of romance, so I think just the love of reading romance drew me to writing it, and I think for me it's a natural path when I write. I've dabbled in a little bit of young adult, and I still kind of keep the romance in there, but I think that I love the happily ever afters, and it's just something that it kind of pulls at your heartstrings, and I kind of say, you're reading along, and when you're really into the story, you get this twinge in your throat that just kind of kind of kills you when things go bad, and it's just something that I find intriguing to write, and like I said, I think it's just originally my love of reading romance that wanted me to write it.
That makes a lot of sense. How about you, Erin?
I'm actually going to be kind of the weird one. I really wasn't planning on writing romance when I first started writing. I was a huge Tolkien fan. I loved Lord of the Rings, and I loved C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia, so I wanted to write a fantasy just like how they wrote a fantasy. And so I started writing, and all of a sudden I had a guy character, a girl character, and they started liking each other, and then it became a romance. So when I was writing it, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't going to be much of a fantasy if it's all about a relationship. So it's kind of funny how it started out that way, and it grew into something that I was completely and utterly unfamiliar with. I really don't read a lot of romance. I never really have, and so when I started writing it, I kind of came to the conclusion that it's like, wow, I've really been missing out. I didn't realize how special and how sweet that this genre can be. It's really been a wonderful experience learning what constitutes a romance novel, and just how really adventurous and epic and dramatic a relationship, as simple as that may seem, can be. So yeah, it's kind of funny. I wasn't drawn to romance, but it drew me in anyway. So
Yeah, that happens. I tend, like, even in fantasy, I tend to read a lot of fantasy. But the stories that have some romance in it and some adventure in it and some mystery in it that sort of blend all pieces of everything in little ways tend to be the ones I like the best. So, how about you, Heidi?
Erin, you're not that weird. I'm in the same boat. And I think it's not so much that I don't feel like I write romance. I feel like I write stories that have romance in them because that's a part of life. And whether it's a hot, steamy romance, which a lot of people don't experience in their lives, or whether it's a sweet and fairly innocent kind of opposites attract and avoiding the relationship because they don't feel like they're good enough for each other, which is the case in the Clear Angel Chronicles, that experience of love or seeking love or missing love is a real human experience. And to me, when there are books where there isn't any romantic involvement, it just doesn't feel as real.
Yeah.
And so not necessarily having the books be all about the romance, but not having any romance, even if you're writing an action or an adventure or a thriller, it feels disingenuous to the human experience.
Yeah. How about you, Jin?
I actually didn't want to write any fiction when I first started writing. The first book I wrote was my biography slash beliefs in faith and a personal outing to my friends and family of my sexuality, which no one read. um, then I wrote my first fantasy, which was not supposed to be romance at all. It was more supposed to be in keen with. It was almost like evil versus good, dark versus light kind of fantasy, and it turned into a romance halfway through because the characters just that's what they needed. Now, when I fully went into romance with my current two books, Love and Kaoru and Love's Shadow, it was just what I find that I prefer. I prefer writing into romance, just that it gives you that more human touch, I think, in a way, when you add it to something.
Yeah.
Because we don't live in bubbles, we don't live in, you know, closed spaces. We need human interaction, and when you write human interaction into your books, you're gonna have a natural romance.
Right.
So that's why.
Yeah. How about you, Shirley?
Well, when I didn't start out to be a writer at all, but when I was reading a lot of romances because I enjoy them. So when
Mm-hmm.
it came time to write, and I did it on a dare because one of my college friends dared me to write a book, so I decided to write one. And since I was just reading romances, I was a 20 book a month person. I decided when I was going to write, well, I'm going to write a romance because I love them. I just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the characters. I enjoy the people that you meet in the stories, and I enjoy their story. Many times they were, solving some kind of a problem that were in their lives. And as I became, more writing more and more books and getting fan mail, I discovered that you touch so many people's lives with the stories that we tell. So that's why I write romance.
And you, Skylar?
Um, I like to read romance novels, so it just felt natural to start writing what I read.
Yeah.
It was really easy to do.
Yeah. So, why do you think people enjoy reading romances so much? And I guess as an extension of that, why do you enjoy reading romance? Is there some sort of escapism from a life where you feel like you have not enough connection to try and get that connection vicariously? What do you think about that?
Well, I'll start if you want. I
Yeah,
think
sure.
I think they want the happy ever after. They
Yeah.
know it's guaranteed at the end of a romance you're gonna get a happy ever after. So I think they like that. First it's the journey of the characters. So once
Mhm.
they meet your characters, if they like them, they're going to go on the trip with them. And it isn't so much that they know that there's going to be either the kiss, the wedding, or whatever at the end of the book. It's how they get there. What obstacles did they have to overcome in order to get to that goal, which is
Mhm.
the goal of the romance novel. And I like that process of defining who these two people are. Did I lose you?
No, no.
Okay,
We're
I
all
lost
still
my
here.
train. But anyway, getting to know who these two people are, and then going on the trip with them, knowing that when I get to the end, I can, be, oh, that was so good, and just like, be able to go to sleep. That's my goal. But I used to read a lot in bed. Now I just fall asleep. But I used to read a lot in bed. So by the time I got to the end of the book, it was like, put it down, pull the covers up. There'll be another one tomorrow.
Yeah.
See, I hope I'm not interrupting somebody,
No,
but
no, go.
I only agree with wait, that's Shirley, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I only agree halfway with Shirley, for the sense of, for me, it's the journey. When I read romance books, um, which when I'm writing my romance, I actually tend to avoid reading romance books because I don't want to copy someone else's ideas into my book. But when I'm on my off time and writing my fantasy, or when I'm on my off time doing something else, I'll read romance books, and I detest happy endings. I do. Um, and the reason is because they don't feel true to me.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm with you there, Jen.
and like in my books, they're not it's not a happy ending. It's a true ending. It's
Mhm.
and a true ending doesn't matter how it ends. It matters how they got there, and that's why I only disagree halfway with Shirley, because
See.
the journey is what's important. And for me, when I read a book, a romance or anything, the journey, if they're taking me along on their trip with them, then I'm enjoying the book. And when they get to the ending, if there's a wedding or something like that, yeah, for me, I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, so yeah, they got married. But if it's something new and fresh, or if it's even something old and been brought back, then I'm sitting there going like, now this they just that I can feel that the characters were alive for the writer, and when the story ended, you gotta have to you kind of have to put those characters to bed in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the happy ending kind of leaves it open to just, oh, well, now what are you gonna do with them? So the finality is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Get
I
the
don't know if
next.
that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah. Rest of you? Thoughts?
I agree with Shirley. I like the happily ever afters, and for me, I read romance because it don't take this the wrong way, but it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power. When you're reading an
Mm-hmm.
epic fantasy, you have to sit there and remember a whole bunch of details and things. And granted, I do like to read fantasy as well, but with romance, it's one of those things that I can open a romance book and I can sit there and just kind of read to enjoy it and not have to think about the minor details or the plot going on behind the scenes. So that's one of the reasons why I like to read it. And again, though, the happily ever afters is, I do enjoy that.
I think we all like the happily ever after.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean there isn't value in having not happily ever after.
True.
Yeah.
I think I know for excuse me, just to kind of go with both Jen and Shirley's points. I think depending on the story, I think a happily ever after can really serve a story and its characters well, and a truer, maybe not happily ever after ending can serve the story well, depending on the plot and the characters as well. I think the biggest thing for me with romance stories and possibly with other people too is I think romance just kind of amplifies that inner desire as humans to be loved. We a lot of us we want to be loved by someone else. We want to know that our lives matter. We want to know that our lives and the things that we do are important. We want to feel special to somebody. And I think romance is one of those genres that amplifies that human desire and even need to some people. We all just want that special someone, and romance is the genre that kind of runs with that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, who's your favorite romance character?
In our books or somebody else's?
How about both? How about both?
Someone else go first.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll run with it. I have to say my favorite is Claire Angel from the Claire Angel Chronicles, mainly because I don't actually read romance on the side. I read action adventure that has romance in it. I have read fantasy that has romance in it, but I don't read romance itself. I think I might have read a couple of like historical romances that were more heavy on the historical than the romance, which I guess is why I didn't realize that readers would consider my book paranormal romance. So,
Yeah. Anyone else?
I'm actually a fan of Jill Eileen Smith. She writes a lot of biblical fiction, but I really liked the romance that she did. It was a historical fiction account of Abigail and King David. I thought that was a really well done romance because it wasn't your typical, fluffy, happy romance where everything was, easy and simple and sweet and cute and cuddly. There was a lot of issues with that, with the characters and things that they had to overcome individually and together. So I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, my favorite romance is actually it's in a dark fantasy series by Anne Bishop. There's 6 books in the series. I think it's called the Dark Jewels is the name of the series, and there's this romance through it, and her characters are like fantasy characters, so they have weird age things happening, and so the man has to wait for the woman to grow up. And so it's really interesting the like dynamic there, and he's like been alive for thousands of years, and he's like finally, but she's 12.
So kind of like Jacob and Renesmee.
I guess, yeah, yeah.
Actually, my favorite romance characters, are the cliche, Scarlet and Rhett from Gone with the Wind, and
Oh yeah, I like them too.
if you just remove the Civil War and all of the, subplots around them and just have the romance, that I really like that. And for Eugene, they don't really have a happily ever after. However, as I would write the next scene in that when it ended, don't worry, they get back together. And I do like, there are books that have several romances in them. Like I read a Clive Cussler series and has a character named Dirk Pitt, and he appears in every one of Clive Cussler's books. So there are women, and then there is one woman that shows up, throughout every now and then, and she's basically the major one. I mean, they never have consummated love scenes. It might have been a kiss, but I don't remember it. But nevertheless,
she's the unattainable one that he can't get over.
Is there, and it's satisfying. I haven't ever closed one of his books and said, "Oh well, this one wasn't as good as the last," or "I could have done better." Anything. It's a male adventure book, and I love it.
For me, and hopefully I didn't cut someone off. Sorry. For me, I'm a classics kind of guy, as well, but I'm more into, I'm the one rooting for Dracula. I'm the one rooting for the doomed character and I'm rooting for him to get the love, but I'm rooting for him also to die in a way. It's weird. It's one of those things where it's like, you should die, but you have to get the love, kind of thing.
So you really liked Phantom of the Opera then, huh?
Oh, I love Phantom of the Opera. I got to meet the cast. I saw it 3 or 4 times. So I love the classics like that. And I was looking right now through my books, and like, even in fantasy, when I looked at fantasy, there's a couple of books that I've read, and for the love of me, I can't remember the names of some of them because it's been so many books before, and they're books that I borrowed. But one of them that I was able to look up real quickly was The Vampire from Vampire of the Mist, by Christy Golden. It's a really nice fantasy book, and it's just that doomed love is great. From my books, all my protagonists in my books tend to be female, and with supporting cast being male. And even that, though, they're two sides of the same coin. So my protagonist Kaoru and her support, Robert, they're both two sides of the same coin, and it's just the insane part of how they view their relationship that drives it. And I love that part about it. I love to try to figure out what they're thinking going back to Bram Stoker, when Dracula, is taking her back to this castle and they're doing this whole thing. You got to be thinking he's thinking safety first in his castle, but he's got to know that eventually they're gonna bust in. So it's like, what's running through their mind of the person that you love, or why you love this character? What are they thinking when they're doing these things? Because they're gonna make a mistake.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
One of my
Oh, go ahead.
one of my favorite characters is the book is called Spiral by Mila Ferreira, and it's a twist to the plot. It's kind of dealing with mental illness, and and even though there's a happy ending, you find out that when you continue to read, you learn about the twist, and it's just something that you wouldn't expect to happen, and I think that's why I really like it. I like the twist and the character Nessa and the doctor. She falls in love with the doctor that's in the book, and I really enjoy that. She's a self-published author.
So, I guess we've kind of talked about this a lot, but do you have a favorite subcategory of romance? So romance is super broad. There's paranormal, there's contemporary, there's historical, there's all of that. So do you have a favorite subgenre, and what is it and why?
I'll go first. I love contemporary because it's, in a way, real life. There are some, I could say, fantastical ones where, they've got the, I guess I kind of wrote one with a rock star. However, you don't always get what you want in the book, and but I like that with contemporary, it's dealing with mostly everyday issues, and that you get to see the growth of the characters, and I like that, in general, you can relate to one or more of the characters, and so I feel like for me, contemporary is the genre that I enjoy reading, I enjoy writing, and I guess that's it.
Well, I've written contemporary, historical, and fantasy, light fantasy, and I like the light fantasy a lot. It's magic, time travel, psychics. The magic has been published, self-published, but the other two are just languishing until I get around to them. But those are, because I write the contemporary for myself, and for self-publishing, and for my traditional publisher. So on the side, I like those. I also, on outside of romance, like the women's fiction books.
Those sometimes fall into that gray area in between romance, where it doesn't quite have that super happy ending, and then more literary stuff. So
it does, and mine is more literary, and it's long. It does have a wedding, but the relationship, that boy meets girl type relationship, is not the focus of the book. Right. The focus of the book is something, there's survival, there's redemption, there's betrayal, there's all those things that are going in there for the central characters. The fact that one of them actually falls in love is just beside the point. She doesn't even end the book. So.
Yeah.
I would have to say, for me, a lot of the books that I read that have a lot of romance in them typically fall under paranormal or urban fantasy. And I guess that's why I always considered I was reading a paranormal story, not a paranormal romance. But, like with Rochelle Mead's...
I like her.
I love Rochelle Mead. Yeah. The story isn't about...
the romance. It's about
but it's a huge part, and it ends up being a big part towards the end of the series. But it was about surviving high school. It's about surviving the vampires. It's about protecting your best friend and falling in love with your teacher, which is just a side note because it's not supposed to happen. But it gets to be a bigger and bigger, and that and there's a lot of urban fantasy and paranormal.
Have you read Ilona Andrews?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh my goodness.
I'm better with books than authors.
It's the Kate Daniels series is the one that she's most known.
Oh no, that's on my to be read.
Okay, it's worth it.
Okay, definitely adding that.
But the romance in that takes the entire series, and then there's a difference. There's a different one that she just started. It's called Burn For Me, and it's more of a romance, but it's still really primarily urban fantasy, and I've been waiting for the second book like a year. I'm so sad it hasn't come out yet.
It means like modern times, like vampires in New York
Like,
City in modern
yeah, so
times.
urban fantasy is
As opposed
like
to
if you
as regular. So is there urban fantasy and regular fantasy?
so
Is there
regular
another
fantasy
term?
usually happens on a world that's not Earth.
Oh, okay.
Or in a distant past not clarified.
Right. Whereas
Okay.
urban fantasy, like, okay, what if suddenly tomorrow magic becomes a real thing? How does our real society deal with that? Or
Right.
it's like, okay, if 100 years in the future someone had discovered magic today, or if someone had discovered magic 100 years ago, and there's a parallel between the technology and the magic. And there's a lot of crossover between urban fantasy and paranormal romance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like with my series, The Hunters, it's about a town that gets taken over by vampires and then saved by an immortal and a werewolf. It's in modern times, but all of those things are more fantastical elements. But when you read different sections between, particularly with the humans, it feels like a contemporary literary novel.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Erin.
I really enjoy writing and reading in high fantasy, kind of like Princess Bride type sort of stories, and I really like science fiction. Yeah, give me
Science
Star
fiction
Wars,
is
it's
great.
all good.
And Skylar?
I like contemporary.
Contemporary.
Yeah.
Cool. So, what tropes in romance do you like, and which do you dislike, and why? I'll give you all a minute to think about that. And whoever has an answer first can jump in.
I'll poke my toe in the water with this one.
Okay.
I like the trope of the strong individual.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter, man or woman, doesn't matter. That's not the point. The strong individual being set in determined what they want. But I hate the trope of the fall in love with me, or I fall in love with you, or even come rescue me individual. It's just this whole idea that something like that has to happen for these people to fall in love is just not. I can't get behind it. Why do you need to be able to rescue them to fall? Why can't they just fall in love? Why do you need an exploding car for you to save her for them to fall in love? You don't need this other outside stuff. People fall in love without that on a daily basis.
Right.
You know, when I fell in love with my wife and when we got married, it wasn't. I wouldn't dive in front of a train to save her. you know, it's just.
But that's what women want.
But do women really want that, or
No,
have
I'm
we been
just
trained to want that from reading romances about it? Yeah.
So, that's me, though.
Anyone else have a thought about this yet?
I hate bad guys being good guys. The whole trope of, Edward in the Twilight series, I was so Team Jacob, it was bad. But yeah, the controlling, manipulative, I know what's best for you kind of guy, and then falling in love with that, and more importantly, continuing that relationship. I like strong females that know what they want. That's part of why I love Rochelle Mead's Vampire Academy so much more than Twilight. And then, as far as tropes that I love, is strong, independent women who don't think they need men, and then find out that they're two halves of the same coin, and that they do need men, not because they need them, but because they want them.
Right.
I'm not sure whether those are tropes, because I never had that term defined really for me, but I can say all of the above.
Love and hate?
My characters tend to be very strong women, and in fact, I have to make sure that I don't make them stronger than the hero. because there are times when I've gone back to do, a reading and edit or whatever, and it's like, wow, she is like the queen of the jungle compared to.
But why is that bad though?
So I
What
do
why
want to make
what
sure
why is
that
it bad if she's stronger than the hero?
I think they need to be equal partners, and if you make one significantly stronger than the other, then there's an imbalance. And I could see it there in the writing, so I didn't want that to be the case. There was something else I was going to say about the two characters, but I don't remember what it was.
It'll come back to you.
Yes.
So, Skylar, thoughts?
I agree with what everyone said about having strong characters and the women being independent and yeah.
I think we all probably would agree with that.
Yeah.
Assuming. I don't know. I could be wrong. Erin and BK?
I don't really like the damsels in distress necessarily. Sorry, Erin.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
I agree with the strong characters. I think along the lines of Shirley, I like it when both people are strong, though I do like it when they show weaknesses as well. So I think that the weaknesses are what we can relate to as a lot of times as readers, and to see them either move past their weaknesses, I think it's really neat, and I like the growth in that. So I think, yes, strong characters, but they need to have growth as well.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. Just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think, sometimes when I see a character, excuse me, that is, perfect in every way and the strong alpha, whatever you want to call it, to me, they're not really as relatable. And I'm not too fond of that. I love seeing characters who do have at least one weakness where they do have room to grow, and I love seeing that journey that they take throughout the story from beginning to end on how they achieve that growth, because as a human, obviously I'm not perfect, nobody is, and if they can grow amidst their weakness, then anybody can. So I think it's also kind of a way of giving hope to people as well. So yeah, I really like to see characters grow from their weaknesses. If they're perfect from beginning to end, it kind of makes me wonder if they're a robot, which works for sci-fi, but other stories, I don't know.
Even robots aren't perfect.
That's very true. That's very true.
They're only as perfect as the people who wrote the code
That's
that
right.
runs that, right? Yeah, I especially like when someone's strength is also their weakness, like where if they go too much into an extreme on that particular skill or particular trait, then they end up, it almost ends up backfiring on them. Like if they're really strong and good at fighting, then maybe they become seen as too aggressive, and then nobody wants to talk to them anymore, and then they have to figure out how to deal with that. Stuff like that. Yeah. So this is one of the things that's hard to talk about in English because English is limited. But in other languages, they have different words for love depending on the type of relationship. So how would you, if you could reinvent the English language, how would you deal with that in order to highlight friendships and family relationships and romantic relationships and the kinds of love that lead to maybe a short, brief exchange versus a forever kind of a love? How would you rename everything?
Wow.
I think we already have names for those things. Also, we have tone in real life. I mean,
when you're talking, it can be easier to explain than when you're writing.
When you're writing it? Well, I mean, when you're writing it, though, we have sweetheart and honey, and in some cases, baby, which is a pet peeve of mine. I don't like that word.
Me either.
But those things mean
Child.
different things to different people, right? Like depending on the individual
Different
person.
people. So if you were a father talking to his teenage daughter, he might call her honey. But if he said honey to his sweetheart, the same word means different things to those two people. And I think the reader gets that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's also how you Shirley said it right. It's also the tone when we write something. For example, if I say I love you, and it's talking to their friend, and goes, oh, I love you, and he said it while he punched him in the chest. You know, that's not going to be a love thing. But if you get the girl saying to him, "Oh, I love you," and has her eyes battered away and her gentle small hands flicked at her hair, you know it's more love than it is, you know, the.
Friendship
So we
love.
have those ways, but yes,
But it
we
can
could
still be.
reinvent the English language to going back to your original question. We could reinvent the English language and add new ways to define these relationships, but would we be overcomplicating them by trying to simplify them?
Maybe. That's a good point. Yeah, maybe.
I think the thing too is you develop a character. So we know that character by the time we get to these um, types of love words. So you can, as a reader, I would understand who you're talking to and whether that word is a sensual word, a sexual word, or it's mother love, love for a child, love for a friend. Even if two men were saying "I love you" to each other and they were perfectly serious about it, if the characters have been developed well enough, we know that there is a connection between them that's not sexual. Or there might be, depends on which way it has gone. But I don't actually ever find, well, I can't say ever, but I don't usually find a confusion with words of love and for whoever we're speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this situation, it's kind of one of those show rather than tell things. Actions
Yeah.
speak louder than words.
Right.
Because, like you said, in other languages, there are many different words to describe different types of love. While in English, we only have the one word. We have love. And I think that's part of our jobs as writers is to, use like what you all have said, tone, description, the plot of the story, the character development, using all of that to be able to kind of, for lack of a better word, make up for, only having just one little word, that we can use
Right.
in the English language. So, yeah, actions definitely speak louder than words in this case.
Yeah.
Well, if I can just add one more thing, and this is sci-fi. It's sci-fi where I heard it. It's sci-fi where I heard it. There was that old TV show that got canceled even before the first season came out, which was I think it was a spin-off from Babylon 5. It's
Okay.
called Excalibur, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite characters on there was the techno mage, and he was talking about his partner who passed away, and he said there are a hundred words to say that would make anybody fall in love with you, but she only needed one, and that was hello. So even we don't have to use the word love to say I love you, and
Absolutely.
that's the joy of being in the English language. And yes, other languages have different words for different types of relationships, but we tend to, as writers and as we get move on forward in the English language, we tend to forget that English isn't English. English is a mixture of Latin, French, Spanish, Gaelic, and you have all these other sub dialects all intermixed. And when we look at English language for what it is, and we go back through and even peek into our thesauruses, peek into our dictionaries, peek into our smartphones and say, how do you say love, or what's the root meaning of love? And you can find all these different words and that mean love. And if you write fantasy, you've probably used them, at offhandedly, and they could mean so much more.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sorry.
So we have a question from Twitter. Finally, people are now awake. um, hold on. All right. She's asking, how do you guys come up with inspiration for your books?
Meatloaf.
The food or the artist?
The artist. The artist. I listen to him profusely while I write.
Is that inspiration or ideas?
No, inspiration. Inspiration. Because especially the song For Crying Out Loud, that was on repeat for the entirety of my first book, Love. For my second book, Kaoru in Love's Shadow, I was actually listening to Jewel, these hands over and over on repeat for every single line of the whole thing.
Yeah, I do that too. I find a song or an album that has the same sort of overall emotional feeling that I want.
Yeah.
I'm writing, and I'll listen to that on repeat while I write.
I don't listen to music when I write. I know too many songs I will sing. So, but I mean, I don't think I really need anything more than the fact that I love to do that. The start of the book, when you don't really know the people and getting to know them, that build, that learning process to get from, to go through the adventure, to get from the beginning to the end, that is my favorite part of writing. I love that part. So just to get there, get to the chair and sit down. Sometimes it's hard because life's always there waiting for you to suck your time away. But once I get in the chair now, I'm not a seat of the pants writer. I plot. So I write my plot out. I know exactly where I'm supposed to go. I don't always get there, because tangents happen, just like life. But I do that. I enjoy the process of writing. So I don't really. I think just the adrenaline running is the inspiration that I need to do it.
I think for me, inspiration kind of arrives strangely for me. I get a lot of my ideas from dreams that I have, and I don't know if it's just because.
Me too. Oh my goodness.
It's like the weirdest thing. It's like, because I don't know. I don't know if it's because I eat really weird snacks at night. Maybe I shouldn't eat as much, chocolate bars or something, or I don't know. But it's really weird. Like literally, some of the craziest ideas I've ever gotten was just. I went to sleep and woke up. Wow, that was a really weird dream. I think I'll write it down in a book. So you never know.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time. I think every single book I have originated from a dream where I woke up being like, wait, but I wanted to know how that ended.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of my, I wouldn't say stories, but interactions, the inspiration is related to real life. Either friends or family or people I observe. I do a lot of people watching. And I'll see interactions and build a whole story around, how did these two people meet? What was their relationship that led to this interaction that I witnessed? And so a lot of my inspiration comes from the real world. Even though I write fantasy and urban fantasy and paranormal romances, it makes it feel more real.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, it came from I was watching a news story, and for my first book, I was watching a news story, and it's about a teacher and a student relationship, and I would just, for some reason, I just thought, well, what was she thinking? Why would someone do that? But then it blossomed into a story from there, a love story.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Jen, and my stories all come from a feeling that I get from music, and I cannot write without music, and I can't just have it going on around me. I have to have it, in earbuds. Otherwise, with 3 kids and a husband walking around the house, I get distracted. So for me, though, it's just the feeling, and I'll usually stick to one channel on like Pandora that I love. And however, for a new series that I'm writing, I'm switching to a different channel because it's a rodeo series, and so I want to make sure that I can go back to my country roots and and get back into that feeling. But yeah, for me, it's just all about what I get from music, not the story in the song, but the feeling I get.
Awesome. So we have about 9 minutes left. So what do you want to say that we haven't talked about already? No?
Well, I guess
We cover everything?
Well, are we gonna go one by one, or
Go in whatever. If you have something to say, just say it.
Well,
I know my mom's watching. Hi, Mom!
well, I think one thing that we didn't get to, and this is probably because the way we usually think about romance is, and we think about why would we fall in love with that guy, everything, but we never really got into the point of why should they even be together. Like when you write your romance, I know I think it's Heidi who said she wasn't planning on writing a romance.
Right.
You know, why should they even be together? When you got to that point, you said, well, they have to be together now. You know, why?
Well, mine aren't together yet. They're fighting the feelings because they don't think they should be together. And I think that's one of the fun things about being able to add romance in instead of actually writing just in the romance category. And I think you find that more with indie authors, is that you can explore more than just the happy ending. You can explore human interaction, and whether that be werewolf and human love, or whether that be male on male love, or female on female love, or whether that be two people who are self-destructive when they're together and actually should not be together, being able to explore those different relationships and not always paint it, not to bash on Twilight again, but as a good thing. It really bothered me that she ended up with the wrong guy, but you know, and that everything was fine. But being able to show those different ways that people love, it makes readers who don't love in the traditional sense feel like they're normal and it's okay.
Yeah.
And being able to, or maybe their behavior is why their life is so miserable and they should look at doing things differently.
Yeah.
I think to kind of piggyback off of that too, one of the things that because I didn't romance either, and it was funny because it started off in my book. It was a guy who actually had an affair on his fiance, and he ended up marrying this other woman and exploring that relationship breaking. It was and how it affected everybody. It was really interesting though to see how, even though that there was loss, that love still remained between the prince and his ex-fiancée, and seeing how their lives are now going, even though they're apart and they're now with other people, how that past still sort of binds them. That and it can even maybe, you know, trying not to get into spoilers here, but you know, could they even end up together in the future? Maybe, maybe not. You know, we just don't know. I don't even know yet. I'm still writing it, but the thing about it is it's, you know, it's exploring that, you know, can you have love through loss? You know, can you still hold on to that piece of the past, or should you hold on to it? You know, it's kind of one of those basic human questions that, you know, most of us go through, where, you know, we've all probably loved somebody that we thought we were supposed to be with, and it didn't work out for our fault, their fault, fate, who knows? But you know, and then what do we do with that? What do we do with that love that we had or maybe still have for that person? You know, it's very fascinating to explore. You know, is it good to have loved and lost, or is it better to have never loved at all? You know, that's a question that's definitely been asked before. So, you know,
well, that's where the joy of writing comes in, because and I'm hoping that I can toss this in one more time for sci-fi. Um, when we write, we're actually doing the whole multiple universe mentality where we're writing that story that was supposed to happen in our own mind versus saying, okay, well, that's gone forever. No, it's not gone forever. Here's where it's going to go because this is where my heart needs it to go now. And I want to share this with everybody. And that's why they're going to fall in love because I'm sharing this point. And then when that's completed, you can take it even farther and say, well, no, how about this way? This didn't work, so let's do it this way. This one worked here. And you're creating all these different paths from that one point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a friend who talks about the ending of a book. When you're reading the ending of a book, she goes, "Do the 5-year divorce test. The 5-year divorce test is at the end of the book. Are those characters going to still be together at the end of 5 years? And if you feel that they're not, then you haven't done your job. At least not as a romance writer." So I always check that at the end. I think that, did I do a good enough job that these characters really love each other, or I've convinced the reader that they love each other enough that their love will sustain through time. It is, and I don't really explore loss, at least not for them, unless it's some other character in the past that have lost. Not a lost love,
Mm-hmm.
because you write for traditional publisher, they have guidelines. That's not one of them.
Yeah.
So they can have a lost love, but they don't become basically friends with them. They could, I guess. I know when I don't remember what her name is, but the philosophical things that you were saying about love and loss, those are things I never really explored to think about writing about. I love that, though. I thought that was very, 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 very insightful as to how love is and how people in real life react to different kinds of things, because I used to work for a guy who was very friendly with his ex-wife, and to me that was like totally foreign. And again, she was the girlfriend of the woman he was going out with, and he married her. So I mean, it was all strange.
Yeah. Skylar? Thoughts?
No, not really.
Well, if we have a moment, I mean, we didn't talk about favorite types of plots that we like, especially in my case, it would be in romance. There are things that I like reading over and over and over again. I do like the marriage of convenience stories, even if they're contemporary, especially if they're contemporary, which makes it harder to write. I like, The Secret Baby. But, there are so many baby books that after a while they just got on my nerves.
So, one last question, really, really quickly before we go, and that is, what do you consider happily ever after? Is it when they get together and they start dating? Or is it, in the historical, it might be like their first kiss or something. Or it could be when they get actually married.
I consider happily ever after when the characters get together. For me, that's what I really like to see when I read and they come together. And then
mine is when they come together. It's when they declare that they are a unit. They don't say I'm a unit, but they are, even if there's no wedding, they have declared that, I'm the man for you and I'm the woman for you.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that because it doesn't matter if there's a wedding or not. It doesn't even matter if they're going to be together at the end or not. The happily ever after was decided when they decided to do that and they declared their love for each other.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually kind of find that I almost get a little annoyed at the endings when there's weddings, which is strange. Yeah, it is very Disney. And as much as, yes, I would like to see them get married, I just find it goes from I love you, I hate you, I love you again, okay, now we're married. And I don't, I don't really like to see that. I like to see the final, like you're saying, declaration.
Yeah.
And
One of my favorite historical romance series is the Fairy Tale Bride series by Kelly McClymer. And in almost all of those books, the wedding happens really close to the beginning of the book. And it's some sort of arranged thing where something happened and then they're like forced by society to get married. And
I
then
know that.
the
I
rest
know
of it
that.
is, okay, we're married. Now we have to figure out how to have a relationship where we can get along with each other. um, so yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely for me.
I've read The Fairy Tale Bride.
Yeah?
Hmm.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming and hanging out and chatting. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too. Our next panel is in an hour, and I think, let me pull up my schedule.
I'll be there.
It's memoir. Our next panel is memoir.
Yeah.
So that'll be different. It'll probably be more factual, I guess. If that makes sense. So hopefully anyone who's listening, if you're interested in memoir, come back in an hour. All right.
Is it the same link?
Thank you.
No, so the links are different, but if you go to the Goodreads group, the Fairgrounds, there's a folder called Events, and in there's a discussion thread for each of the different panels, and the link to the memoir panel will be in there.
Okay.
Yeah.